Hey everyone, I'm Lila, and I'm 28 years old. I used to think family was your bedrock, love, trust, and a home that caught you when you fell. But on my parents' 30th wedding anniversary, in a dining room draped in candlelight and deception, they tore that belief to shreds. They didn't just ask me to leave. They kicked me out, branded me a burden, and erased me from the house I'd held together for years. I paid their mortgage, covered their supposed medical crises, and funded my brother's college dreams. But to them, I was worthless. The worst part wasn't the eviction, it was uncovering their lie. They'd faked my father's cancer to siphon my savings for a life of luxury, and I was too loyal to see it. This is the story of how I exposed their scam on a live broadcast, reclaimed my freedom, and redefined what family means. Before we dive in, drop a comment. What time are you watching this, and where are you? I'd love to hear your story, too, because sometimes, the only way to heal from betrayal is to stand tall and tell the truth. It was a chilly October evening in Portland, Maine, the air sharp with the tang of sea salt and the rustle of fallen leaves. The sky was a deep indigo, stars winking through wisps of cloud. I pulled into the driveway of our family home. A weathered Victorian with sagging shutters and a front porch I'd paid to rebuild after a storm. In my passenger seat was a gift box, a crystal vase etched with 30 years of love for my parents' anniversary. I'd saved for months, skipping coffee runs, movie nights, and new clothes to afford it, wanting to give them something to treasure. As I stepped out, my sneakers sank into the damp gravel, and a cold breeze tugged at my scarf, sending a shiver down my spine. The house glowed warm, its windows spilling amber light, but a quiet unease coiled in my chest, like the hush before a tempest. Inside, the dining room was staged for celebration. A cluster of white lilies sat on the table, their scent heavy and overpowering, mingling with the aroma of roasted chicken. My mother, Ellen, was fussing over a tray of mashed potatoes and gravy, her hands trembling slightly. My father, Gregory, stood by the fireplace, swirling whiskey in a chipped tumbler, his eyes distant and cold. My younger brother, Evan, 21 and home from college, was arranging napkins, his face lighting up when he saw me. "Lila, you made it," he said, his voice a small anchor in the tense air. I set the gift box on the sideboard next to a bottle of Chardonnay I'd brought and hung my jacket on the rack. "Wouldn't miss it," I said, forcing a smile despite the weight pressing on the room. We sat, and dinner began in a strained silence, broken only by the clink of forks and the faint creak of the old house settling into the night. I was about to compliment the meal when my father slammed his glass down, the sharp sound making my mother flinch. "Lila," he said, his voice cold and rehearsed, "you're 28. You're a burden on this family. Pack your things and get out. We're done carrying you." The words hit like a tidal wave, knocking the air from my lungs. My fork froze midair, and I stared at him, waiting for a crack in his expression, a sign this was a cruel prank. My mother kept her eyes on her plate, her lips pressed tight. Evan dropped his fork, his voice sharp. "Dad, what the hell? Lila pays for everything, the mortgage, your medical bills, my tuition. How can you call her a burden?" My father's glare silenced him. "This is our house, Evan. She's had her chance to contribute, and it's not enough." I forced my voice to stay steady, though my heart was hammering. "I've paid the mortgage for 7 years," I said. "The electric, the water, your hospital bills, I've kept this family alive." "What do you mean, not enough?" My father laughed, a harsh, mocking sound that stung like salt in a wound. "A few payments don't buy you a lifetime lease, Lila. You're dragging us down." My mother's voice was a whisper, barely audible. "It's for the best, honey. You'll be fine on your own." The room seemed to close in, the air too thick to breathe. A burden? I'd poured my life into this house, and they were tossing me out like trash. I stood, my chair scraping loudly against the oak floor. "If that's your decision," I said, my voice calmer than I felt, "then I'm done here. You'll see what it means to lose me." I grabbed the gift box, suddenly grateful I hadn't given it to them, and walked upstairs, ignoring Evan's worried Lila, trailing behind me. As I closed my bedroom door, a fire ignited in my chest. This wasn't just about kicking me out. They were hiding something, and I was going to unearth it. To understand why this cut so deep, I need to take you back to the heart of my childhood in this Portland home. As a little girl, I'd sit on the porch swing with my father, sharing ice cream cones while he spun stories about sailing the Atlantic, his eyes bright with dreams. My mother would hum sea shanties in the kitchen, her hands dusted with flour as she baked blueberry pies, the smell filling the house with warmth. Evan and I would race through the backyard, building forts from old blankets and driftwood, pretending we were explorers charting new worlds. Those memories were my anchor, the glue that held me to this family even when it started to fray. The unraveling began when I was 21, and my father was diagnosed with what they called stage 3 lung cancer. He'd been a dock worker, hauling crates at the harbor, but the diagnosis ended his career. He lived off disability checks, his laughter replaced by a bitter edge that sharpened with every passing month. My mother, a part-time florist at a local shop, earned just enough for her own clothes and coffee dates, leaving the family's survival to me. By the time I graduated college with a marketing degree, the house was drowning. Medical bills stacked up on the counter, foreclosure notices arrived in red-stamped envelopes, and creditors called so often I stopped answering the phone. I took a job at an ad agency, working 60-hour weeks to keep us afloat. My first paycheck went to the mortgage, and it became a ritual. I paid for everything: the electric bill when it spiked during Maine's brutal winters, the water heater that burst in 2020, flooding the basement, the new roof after a nor'easter ripped shingles away. I covered Evan's college tuition when his scholarships fell short, because I wanted him to have the future I'd sacrificed. I worked overtime, canceled weekend getaways, and wore the same boots for years to save money. My parents never said thank you. My father would grunt, "You're just doing your part," while my mother offered vague smiles and asked for a little help with another round of chemo payments. I told myself they were suffering, that they'd see my worth someday. I was naive. There were moments that should have opened my eyes. When I was 22, my father's treatment costs drained my savings, forcing me to live on canned soup and crackers for months. He didn't acknowledge it, just complained about the hospital's scratchy blankets. When my mother claimed she needed heart scans in 2021, I paid $12,000 for tests, only to see her show up at church in a new silk dress the next week. I remember staying up past midnight, my eyes burning as I balanced their medical bills, while my father lounged downstairs, laughing at late-night talk shows. I thought I was saving his life. They saw me as a bottomless well. The red flags grew bolder over the past year. My father started recovering, his energy returning, but the medical bills kept coming, each one marked urgent and addressed to me. My mother began locking her phone and shutting her laptop whenever I walked into the room. Once, I overheard them in the garage, whispering about keeping Lila committed and securing the funds for the big plan. I thought they were planning a retirement surprise, maybe a gesture to thank me for carrying them. Evan saw through it first. One evening, as we scrubbed dishes in the kitchen, he leaned in and said, "Dad's been way too healthy lately, but they keep asking for money." And I saw a brochure for a cruise on their desk. Something's wrong. I brushed it off, clinging to the hope that family meant loyalty. That hope shattered on their anniversary. The morning after the dinner, I woke with my father's words, "You're a burden," echoing like a taunt. I waited until my parents left for what they called a checkup, leaving Evan at home. He was sprawled on the couch, sketching on his tablet, but sat up when I knelt beside him. "Evan," I said, my voice low, "do you know why they kicked me out?" He hesitated, his eyes clouded with worry. "I don't know the whole story, but I heard Dad talking about a new RV. And Mom's been shopping online for vacation stuff. I think they're using your money for something big." That was all I needed. I slipped into my parents' study, a cluttered room they rarely let me enter, the air thick with the smell of mildew and stale coffee. The desk was buried under receipts, empty mugs, and a wilting fern. I focused on a locked drawer in my mother's desk, remembering she had a key in a hollowed-out book titled Maine Lighthouses. My hands shook as I opened the drawer and found a folder labeled Medical Records. Inside were hospital bills, test results, and printed emails that made my stomach lurch. The bills were inflated, $18,000 for a single chemo session that never happened. An email from my father to a buddy read, "Lila's footing the bill for everything. We're set for the RV and a Bahamas cruise." Another from my mother to a travel agent said, "Confirm the Caribbean trip for spring. Lila's payments will cover it." The worst was a forged medical report claiming my father had lung cancer, signed by a Dr. Harold Vance who didn't exist. I googled the hospital's staff directory, no trace of Vance or the treatments listed. They'd faked it all, using my money to fund a lavish lifestyle, new cars, vacations, even a hot tub I'd never seen in our backyard. I'd paid over $350,000 in medical costs, mortgage payments, repairs, and tuition since I was 21, believing I was saving my father's life. I sank to the floor, the papers trembling in my hands, my breath ragged. For a moment, I wanted to storm their bedroom and scream, but I knew my father would deflect, and my mother would play the victim. I needed a strategy. I took photos of every document, emailed them to myself, and carefully replaced the folder. Then I called my best friend, Maya, a social media manager who'd always questioned my parents' endless health crises. "Maya," I said, my voice breaking, "they faked Dad's cancer to scam me. I need you." She was at the house in 20 minutes, her eyes blazing as I showed her the evidence. "Lila, this is beyond sick," she said, pacing the kitchen, her boots clicking on the tiles. "They're not just kicking you out, they're stealing your life. You've been their bank for years." She urged me to gather more proof, bank statements, texts, anything to show my payments. "And we need to go public," she added. "A live stream. Let the world see who they really are." For the next 10 days, I became a detective in my own story. I pulled bank statements showing every mortgage payment, every medical transfer, every tuition check for Evan. I found old texts from my mother, "Lila, Dad's chemo is $6,000 this month. Can you handle it?" Or from my father, "The scans are urgent. Send the money now." Each one was a lie, a dagger of betrayal. Evan helped, sneaking into my parents' email when they left their laptop open at night. He found a receipt for a $25,000 RV, a booking for a Caribbean cruise, and an invoice for a hot tub installation. "They're living like royalty," he said, his voice shaking with anger. "And you're paying for their throne." Maya connected me with Ms. Callahan, a lawyer specializing in financial fraud. I met her at her office, a sleek space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Portland's harbor. I laid out the documents, statements, and emails, my hands steady despite the ache in my chest. She nodded, her expression serious. "Lila, your parents have committed fraud by misrepresenting your contributions and falsifying medical records. You have a strong case for restitution, especially since the mortgage is in your name." I'd forgotten that detail. When we refinanced 6 years ago, their credit was too poor, so I'd taken it on to save the house. Ms. Callahan suggested a public confrontation to pressure them into admitting the truth, ideally recorded for legal leverage. "A live stream could work," she said, "but you need to be airtight with your evidence." Before the confrontation, I decided to cut their lifeline. I logged into my accounts, electric, water, gas, internet, all in my name because their credit was non-existent. One by one, I canceled autopay, my fingers steady as I clicked remove payment method. Electric, gone. Water, gone. Internet for their endless streaming, gone. I contacted the hospital, confirming no treatments existed, and stopped the automatic payments for their medical bills. I transferred my savings to a private account, recalling how my mother had pushed for a joint emergency fund years ago, claiming it was for family security. I removed their cars from my auto insurance, remembering my father's smug "We're saving so much thanks to you." Each click was a liberation, a severing of the invisible chains that had bound me to their greed. I sat back, staring at the laptop screen, a grim satisfaction settling in. They'd feel my absence like a cold wind. I reached out to my grandmother, Nana Rose, my father's mother, who lived in a retirement home on the outskirts of Portland. She'd always been sharp, her wit cutting through family nonsense like a knife. Over tea in her cozy apartment, she handed me a USB drive, her hands steady despite her age. "Your father bragged about his new life on a video call last year," she said, her voice firm. "Said you were paying for their dreams. I recorded it, just in case. Use it, Lila." I hugged her, tears stinging my eyes. Nana Rose was my ace, a quiet force I hadn't expected. I planned a live stream with Maya, inviting my parents to what they thought was a family meeting to discuss my move. The event was set for 2 weeks after the anniversary, and I spent every day preparing, rehearsing my words, and steeling my resolve. The night before, I sat on my bed, staring at the gift box I'd bought for them. The crystal vase gleamed in the lamplight, a relic of the love I'd once believed we shared. I packed it into my suitcase, a reminder of what I'd lost, and what I was fighting to reclaim. The livestream took place in Maya's loft, a bright space with exposed brick walls and a view of Portland's twinkling skyline. I set up a laptop with a ring light, my folder of evidence neatly stacked beside me. Maya managed the stream, monitoring comments and recording everything. Evan sat nearby, his phone cued with Nana Rose's video, his jaw tight with anticipation. My parents arrived, assuming it was a private talk, their faces smug as they settled into armchairs. "Lila," my father said, his tone patronizing, "let's keep this civil. You need to move on." My mother nodded, her voice soft. "We're just trying to help you grow, honey." I started the stream, the red live icon pulsing like a heartbeat. "Hey, everyone," I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. "I'm Lila, and this is my story. For 7 years, I've paid for my parents' house, their bills, and my brother's college. I thought I was saving my father from cancer. But they kicked me out, called me a burden. Tonight, you'll see the truth." I held up the forged medical report. "This claims my father has lung cancer. It's fake. They've been using my money for RVs, cruises, and a hot tub." My father's face drained of color, his voice rising. "That's a lie. You're unhinged." My mother gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. I showed the bank statements, my payments totaling $360,000 over 7 years. "These are my transfers for your treatments," I said, my voice firm. "But the hospital has no record of them." I played Nana Rose's video, my father's voice booming, Lila's covering everything. "We've got the RV, the Bahamas trip, the whole package. She'll never figure it out." The chat erupted, comments like "this is disgusting" and "Lila, you're a warrior" poured in, the viewer count climbing past 3,000. My mother started sobbing, her voice trembling. "Lila, we didn't mean to hurt you. We were desperate." My father lunged for the laptop, trying to slam it shut, but Evan blocked him, his voice low. "Sit down, Dad. Everyone's watching." I kept going, showing emails about their cruise and RV purchase. "You faked a deadly illness," I said, my voice breaking with the weight of betrayal. "You threw me out to keep the scam alive." The stream hit 4,000 viewers, neighbors and coworkers chiming in. I saw their hot tub last summer. Lila paid for their new car. My father's composure shattered. "You're ruining our lives," he shouted, his face flushed. "We needed that money." It was as close to a confession as I'd get, and the audience saw it. Maya cut the stream after 25 minutes, saving the recording as the comments kept flooding. "Lila, you're so brave. Those parents are monsters." The fallout was immediate. Neighbors unfriended my parents on social media, local shops turned them away, and their church group issued a public statement condemning their actions. My mother posted a tearful video on Instagram. "We made mistakes, but Lila's blowing this out of proportion." I responded with screenshots of their emails and the forged report, letting the truth speak louder. The live stream changed everything. Viewers sent messages of support, some offering to help me find a new place. Ms. Callahan used the recording to build a fraud case, recovering $180,000 of my payments through a settlement. My parents tried to spin the narrative, claiming they were in financial distress, but the community had seen the truth. Their lies had nowhere to run. A month later, my father showed up at Maya's loft, pounding on the door at midnight. "Lila, you've destroyed us," he yelled, his voice slurred with anger. Maya, calm but firm, called the police, and I stayed silent, my heart racing but my resolve unbroken. I'd learned my lesson, no more chances for their manipulation. I filed a restraining order, and the judge granted it, barring them from contacting me or Evan. Evan's life in that house became unbearable. My father blamed him for siding with Lila, while my mother guilt-tripped him about tearing the family apart. But Evan was stronger than they knew. He worked part-time at a bookstore, saving every penny for his own place. I sent him money when I could, and we planned for him to move out when he turned 22. "Just a little longer," I told him during a late-night call, my voice soft. "We're almost free." He laughed, a tired but hopeful sound. "You're my hero, Lila. Always will be." For months later, Nana Rose called with news. "Your parents are losing the house," she said, her voice matter-of-fact. "They couldn't pay the bills without you, and their credit's in ruins. They're moving to a cheap apartment downtown." I felt a flicker of guilt, but it passed like a shadow. They'd built their empire on my sacrifices, and now it was dust. "Thanks, Nana," I said. "I'm done carrying their weight." A year later, Evan turned 22. I drove to the house to pick him up, my hands tight on the steering wheel as I pulled into the driveway. The house was a husk, windows boarded, garden choked with weeds, a foreclosure notice stapled to the peeling front door. Evan stood on the porch, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder, his face resolute. He didn't look back as we loaded his things into my car, the gravel crunching under our feet. "You okay?" I asked, my voice gentle. He smiled, his eyes bright with relief. "Free, finally. Let's get out of here." We drove to my new apartment, a cozy loft with skylights and a view of Portland's shimmering harbor. I'd set up a futon for Evan, stacked with his favorite graphic novels and a new sketchpad. That night, we ordered Thai takeout and sprawled on the floor, laughing about old memories, the blanket forts we built, the time we got caught stealing apples from a neighbor's orchard, the summer we tried to sail a homemade raft in a kiddie pool. For the first time in years, I felt like I had a family, not because of blood, but because of love. Evan re-enrolled in college, studying environmental science, a passion he'd buried under our parents' demands. I kept working as a marketer but launched a side hustle, designing logos for local businesses, building a life that was mine alone. My parents' world collapsed without me. The bank seized the house, and they moved to a rundown apartment on the city's edge, their social circle reduced to whispers and pity. Nana Rose said they tried to reach me through cousins, begging for a chance to explain. I didn't respond. I'd given them 7 years of my life, and they'd repaid me with deception. I owed them nothing but the truth they'd tried to bury. 2 years later, Evan and I sat on my apartment's balcony, watching the harbor lights dance on the water, the air cool with the promise of fall. He'd just won a research grant for a conservation project, and I'd landed a major design contract with a brewery. "Lila," he said, turning to me, his voice steady, "I used to think family meant forgiving everything, no matter how much it hurt. You showed me it's about who lifts you up, who sees you for you. I'm so glad we're a team." I hugged him, tears welling in my eyes, my heart full. "Me too, Evan. We're more than enough." Looking back, I see that walking away was the hardest choice I ever made, but it saved me. I learned that forgiving doesn't mean accepting toxicity, it means letting go for your own peace. I learned that my worth isn't what I give to others, but what I keep for myself. And I learned that family is built on respect, not obligation, even if it means leaving behind the people who raised you. My parents thought they could erase me, but I wrote a new story, and I'm holding the pen. What about you? Have you ever had to choose yourself over family? Maybe you faced a lie that changed how you see love or trust. Share your story in the comments, I'd love to hear it. If this hit home, smash that like button and subscribe for more real-life journeys of courage and redemption. Thanks for being here.